Hi, I'm Kylie Roberts.
And I'm Mel Wunwell, and we are Shift Unlimited.
In this podcast series, we will be doing a deeper dive into many facets of living and leading in this modern world, from founder to scale up, right through to leaders of global established organizations.
We will explore how we can be more holistic and authentic as we connect more deeply with ourselves, our relationships with others, and the wider world.
Let's begin. Welcome to today's podcast, which is focused on the Bedrock practices of transformational leadership and coaching. We're going to begin today with a poem, and maybe you have heard this before. When I was a young man, I wanted to change the world. I found it was difficult to change the world, so I tried to change my nation. And when I found that I couldn't change the nation, I began to focus on my town. I couldn't change the town, and as an older man, I tried to change my family. Now, as an older man, I realized the only thing I can change is myself. And suddenly, I realized that if long ago I had changed myself, I could have made an impact on my family. My family and I could have made an impact on our town. Their impact could have changed the nation, and I could indeed have changed the world. In a previous podcast, we talked about the fact that every organization, no matter how large or small, from a startup to a global organization, needs transformational leaders, especially in the VUCA world that we live in today.
Progressive leaders are often differentiated by how they respond and interpret their own and other people's behaviors and the world around them, and how they maintain power or protect themselves against threats. We also shared that researchers found that leaders who undertake a voyage of personal understanding and development can transform not only their capability, but also those of their organization, much like the poem above. Many leaders try and make change happen, opposite to this. So by undertaking large-scale organizational transformation, they try things like that and they rarely gain much traction or much return on investment. This is because for real change to happen, we need to start first with ourselves. When we've done that work, then we can focus on our teams and then more broadly so that it ripples out. We also shared that one research study estimated that approximately 33% of leaders now profile as more progressive, so redefining and transforming. These leaders are more deeply connected to themselves, the people around them, and the wider world in general. They are more likely to lead with questions rather than going with traditional solutions and answers. They are more inclusive and collaborative. They hold their truth lightly and seek out regular feedback. They are typically more purpose-led and concerned for the impact their organization has on their wider communities and the world, not just in the short term, but also in the medium and the longer term as well.
So today we will share 3 concepts or practices which, when consistently practiced and used, they enable and accelerate our ability to live, lead, and coach in this way. The first of these practices is RIDE. We mentioned RIDE as a principle in the episode on contracting and coaching. So we'll come back to it in today's episode now. RIDE is a model that we devised in Shift Unlimited based on the data we have collected as we've worked with thousands of leaders over the last 10 years. We discovered that the most transformational and progressive leaders undertook the practices of RIDE consistently. And those practices, you might remember, RIDE is an acronym. So the practices are reflection, inquiry, disruption, and experimentation.
Let's start with reflection. When we routinely reflect on our words, behavior, and impact after meetings, conversations, etc., especially when they've gone particularly well or badly, we can shift and adjust how we are. And this in turn enables us to grow and evolve our leadership style and approach. If we just rush from one meeting to the next, we leave no time for reflection or thinking, and we stay in the same routines and patterns. So when we reflect, and especially when we do this dispassionately and without judgment, neither painting ourselves as the hero or the victim, we can become really proficient at this. And we can get to the point where we can do reflection real time in the moment and adjust our behavior in the moment accordingly to get a better outcome for ourselves and the people in the world around us. David Kolb defines learning as the process whereby knowledge is created through the transformation of experience. Reflection is an explicit part of this. In Dilt's Logical Levels, he also talks about reflection, and he provides a framework for reflecting on who we are as people and authentic leaders. And we do this by reflecting on what makes us who we are on a number of different levels as follows. So we can reflect on the environment where we spend our time in our lives. The next level is our behavior, how we behave in specific situations. The next is capability, the skills and experience that we have. Next level is a deeper, more unconscious level, that of beliefs and values. So what's important to us, what drives a lot of what we do and say. And then there's identity, our identity, who we are at our deepest core. These levels aren't really a hierarchy, as they all connect to each other and they all influence each other. But this is a great model that supports the more reflective we can be on each of these levels, the greater the growth and impact on our identity. This supports the paradigm that underlines our coaching right now, which is who we are drives what we do, rather than what we do driving who we are. And we will go into logical levels in a later podcast and do it in a lot more detail.
The first letter of the acronym is reflection, and the second is inquiry. When we go into organizations to do research, we routinely hear people in the organization describing decisions and responses as knee-jerk. This is because of the tendency to rush to solutions and outcomes before really getting to the heart of issues. One of the habits in Stephen Covey's book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, is to seek first to understand, then to be understood. And Jim Collins, in his book, From Good to Great, he talks about level 5 leadership, and that level 5 leaders lead with questions rather than solutions and problem solving. All of this is further reinforced in Nancy Klein's book, Time to Think, where she says the greatest gift leaders can give an organization and the people is creating a thinking environment where people learn to think for themselves, that this is true empowerment. When we build into our leadership the practice of inquiry, we can create this empowerment all around us. Inquiry is the practice of asking great, quite often open questions, like the chunking up and down questions, the meta model questions, and questions that begin with what, when, who, how, and where. The first 2 letters of the acronym RIDE, they give us insight and information. And then the second 2 give us the ability to grow and transform from that insight and information, and also to grow and transform alongside the people around us.
So the next letter in the acronym is D for disruption. The term situational leadership has been around for a while. It describes leaders who are able to adapt and change their behavior to the situation they're in so that they can consistently get great outcomes and results. Leaders who have the same solution or style and approach to every situation and scenario tend to get stuck and have widely varied and inconsistent results. When we are willing to disrupt our rituals and routines, our beliefs, our behaviors and expectations, we can expand our leadership and coaching toolkit. This is the key to having a growth mindset. Disruption and a willingness to experiment go hand in hand. We mentioned in one of our earliest podcasts that Bandler and Grinder discovered that a common trait in all of the great change makers that they researched and modeled was this childlike curiosity and wanton experimentation. So we can experiment with all sorts of things, experimenting with our behavior, our words, our rituals and routines, how, when, where we do things, all of these things. There's a great expanse of things that we can experiment with. And then the next concept builds on the ride principles.
So, the second concept and practice that we want to share with you today is the three lenses. The three lenses has been exceptionally powerful as a framework and also a tool in the coaching that Mel and I do in Shift Unlimited with leaders. So it really helps people to move their focus from one lens to the other. So the three lenses, they are the I lens. So what is happening inside, beneath the surface of your skin, what's going on within you. The second is the we lens, and this is you in relationship to others. So your relationships, the dynamics, the role that you have in each of those relationships playing out as they are. And then the third is the it lens. This is you in relationship to the world, the bigger picture, the organization that you're in, the industry, the region of the world itself, and the planet. So, really big systems thinking in the third lens, in the it lens. So, these three lenses, learning to be able to drop our attention between the three lenses enables us to be much more effective leaders and coaches. So it helps us to not get stuck in one particularly favored lens. It also is really great as a leader to be able to have a balance across all three. So spending roughly equal amounts of time and attention in all three of the lenses. And in a lot of the work that we do one-to-one, the stuff that we want to change out in the world, it all starts with the lens inside, so the I lens. So a lot of the time when clients come to us and there's something they want to talk about that they are challenged with or unhappy with, either in a relationship or their space in an organization or the way the system is playing out, so even things like their relationship with climate change, we will all often start with inquiry on the I lens. So change begins from within. And this deeper awareness of the I lens is really something that comes to play a lot in post-conventional leaders. So we develop out the I lens a lot in our coaching.
So how would leaders typically use the three lenses on a daily or weekly basis? We can use it to step back from our diary and just have a look over the course of a week or a month. Where are we putting all our attention? Is it on the we lens, just on our teams? Are we spending any time on the I lens? So time for ourselves to really step back from our day to day and be more strategic and reflect on how we're being, what we're doing, what we're spending our time and attention on. We can always use it as well for like a pre-meeting. So we can use it to plan the meeting, the agenda, to make sure that we're focused on the three lenses in the meeting. We can use it at home as well to make sure we're getting some time for ourselves, some time for our family, but also time for the bigger system that we're operating within as well. So lots of ways we can use it. And a good place to start is to notice, what do we tend to talk about when we're with other people, and what lens focuses it? So do we tend to talk about politics or things that are happening in the world, which is a bias for the it lens? Do we tend to talk about ourselves, which might be a bias for the I lens, or spend the time that we have more focused on personal reflection and some solitary space? Or do we tend to talk about family, friends, our teams, which would be a focus or a bias for the we lens?
So we can develop our role in each of these three lenses, and that can come from a lot of reflection and inquiry. So, firstly, for the I lens, how might you develop a deeper awareness of your relationship with yourself? You could reflect on some things like, how am I feeling in my mind and in my body today? And really think about the emotion that might go along with that. What is the story that I'm telling myself about this situation? And is the story helping or hindering me? You could ask yourself questions like, how is my energy first thing in the morning when I wake up? How is my energy in the middle of the day? How is my energy at the end of the day? Where do I get my energy from? What fulfills me? What saps that energy away from me? So, what takes it away? We could ask ourselves some questions around childhood story. So, how am I being triggered in this moment, and what specifically is being triggered? Where did that first begin? So, there's lots of great questions that you can ask yourself to reflect on and inquire on in terms of the I lens to develop that.
And then questions that we could ask ourselves and others with regard to the we lens, so our connections and dynamics with other people, we could ask ourselves, how present and connected am I being in my conversations today? How distracted have I been, and what has been distracting me? How close am I to the people around me? How much do I notice they're willing to share confidences and vulnerabilities? How can I have deeper connections with the people around me? What can I shift and change about my behavior, my style, and my approach to have better connections? What impact am I having on the people around me? How consistent am I in my approach as I engage with people around me? And as a result, how much trust is there in this relationship? And we can also think about feedback, because feedback is a core component of a high performance team and a high performance environment. So we could ask ourselves, who can I give confidence building feedback to today? And also, who can I ask for feedback so that I am aware of the impact that I'm having? So there's some examples of some we lens questions we could ask.
And then some example inquiry questions for the it lens, you in relation to the wider system, could be things like, what is happening in the business that I need to be paying attention to? The pastel questions are great ones to ask as well. So they're great for the bigger system. You could ask, how on the business am I versus in the business? And when we say on the business, we mean looking at it as a whole, projecting into the future. In the business is kind of in the wheel of the day to day. What am I doing about my role in the future of the planet? So, what am I doing to perpetuate or make change around sustainability, climate, anything to do with the environment or politics, anything you might feel you're unhappy with? What is my role in making that change or perpetuating it to keep it the same? We love having conversations around each of these three lenses with our clients. Each lens is deeply profound and can be deeply transformational when you really develop your muscles in each of the lenses. The final practice and principle that we want to share with you today is called the three horizons, and it is linked a little bit to the it lens.
So the three horizons, if you are watching this on YouTube, you'll see that there's a graphic that brings it to life, or you can click on the show notes. There are three horizons. The first horizon is what's called the horizon of the manager. So it's the horizon of the here and now, being really focused on what's going on. Kylie mentioned being in the business. Horizon one is a lot about being in the business, in the weeds. So it's managing the status quo, keeping the momentum going, making sure there's not too much inertia, making sure procedures and policies are being followed. A lot of repetition in Horizon 1, doing what we've done before and expecting to get the same result. Then there's Horizon 2, which is more midterm. And midterm can be any term because in different industries, short, medium, and long term can be quite varied. In the pharmaceutical industry, for example, where sometimes it's 25 years to develop a new product, the midterm might be 15 years out or 12 years out, whereas in another fast moving business, it could be 3 years out. But the midterm is the domain of entrepreneurs, seeing opportunity that is different from what exists today. So it's about innovation, adaptation, but incremental adaptation and innovation, stretching and challenging what exists and making something new from it. And this is the Horizon 2, so the entrepreneurial thinkers. And then there's Horizon 3. This is what isn't really visible when we look and scan the horizon today. So this is the domain of visionary leaders who create the future. And they can spot weak signals that indicate emergent change, a vision that will be true in the longer term that we can start preparing for today. And again, as with the three lenses, each leader will have a bias where they like to spend their time and energy. For a lot of newer leaders, it can be quite operational, which is the domain of Horizon 1. As leaders become more able to empower others to step back from the day-to-day, then they become more adept in Horizon 2. The most stretching one is Horizon 3. We have to really be prepared to dig around to find those weak signals. So listening to futurists or seeing what the latest technology is that's likely to not even emerge for 10 or 15 years as something that's mainstream. So when we can develop our capability so that we have, if not equal turns of attention in these three horizons, that can be incredibly expansive and developmental for us. And the most important thing is that when we make decisions today, we take into account all three of the time horizons. So we're not knee-jerk. For example, making massive cost reductions that suit Horizon 1, but then hurt Horizon 2, so we then have to go into a deeply developmental or expansive. So it's very up and down and can be quite disruptive. So that's the concept of the three time horizons.
Mel has already given you some reasons there as to why this is a valuable principle to hold on to in leadership. When we go in to work with a leadership team, it's inevitable that we will pretty much always bring each of these models and practices into the very initial conversation. So the ride model, the three lenses, and the three horizons, because these really are the bedrock practices and principles for transformational leadership. Often, when we are going in initially to work with teams, they are very often stuck in Horizon 1, the day to day. So, have their strategic board meetings or their strategic leadership meetings are actually not as strategic as they are saying they are. They're more about the day to day running of the business. So it really helps them to see the three horizons and to be able to have one eye on the here and now and one eye on the future as well. We have also worked with teams and individuals who can get stuck at the other end, who are future focused, that they have a resistance to giving any time or space to focusing on exploring some of the challenges that they have right here in the here and now. So it's equally as important for those teams and leaders to draw their attention across all three horizons as it is for the teams who may get stuck in Horizon 1. So we find that the three horizons as a quite a simple looking model makes it easy for organizations and leaders to accept and also project their attention across Horizon 1, Horizon 2, and Horizon 3 in not necessarily equal amounts, but in fair amounts, so that Horizon 1, 2, and 3 are all getting attention from the leadership group. So, one way that you can probably do an assessment on where the attention is just by looking in your schedule. Is your day filled with meetings back to back focused on problem solving on the here and now? Where is there time, space, and conversation for innovation and future proofing the business? Also, when you attend meetings or are having conversations with others in your team or even outside of your organization, drawing on questions that draws people's attention into Horizon 2 and 3 can be deeply valuable. It does make us a lot more strategic in our thinking when we do that. We can be both broad and deep in our thinking. So we hope that you find these three bedrock principles and practices as valuable as we do in our business. They do require some practice. The RIDE principles are not just principles, they are practices that create transformational leadership. The three lenses is a practice that creates transformational leadership, being able to divide our attention from self to relationships to the wider world. And then also spending time on the here and now and time on the future with the three lenses is just as important as well. So we thank you for listening to the podcast today. Glad to have you with us. You can subscribe to our podcast channel here so you get updates on when we have a new episode launching, and also follow us on Instagram at shift_unlimited for regular content on these topics.